In today's video, I pretend I'm at the playground, sliding, okay, rediscover an animal, ant, and ask some serious questions.
What noise do bulls make? What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel, welcome back to another video, and welcome back to Vic Drives. And, we're here, well ahead of schedule. Here is not, like, this location, although this is a beautiful location. Here is well ahead of schedule. For those of you that watched the very first video on the channel, and if you haven't, I will link it up here. I had a plan to buy my dream car, my dream supercar, sometime in the near future. Now, at the time, the near future was mid to late next year, 2021. But now, given current circumstances, near future is, well, now. So given how much I've been saving and not spending on dinners or hanging out with friends and all that kind of stuff due to being pretty much locked up at home and not really going anywhere, I find myself in a pretty unique position where I'm almost a year ahead of schedule and I can start looking for my car now. I was going to use this video to kind of document my process and to show you guys, here is what I did on my journey, I suppose. But then I figured there's a lot of people out there who might be looking to get their first supercar in their 20s, and maybe they don't know how to do it, or maybe they don't know what they want to get. So I'm not going to disclose what car I want to get just yet, but I will kind of go through a few options that I had before I made my choice. Alright, so this will be one of a few videos that I make in a series. This one will probably cover requirements that I had when I was looking for a car, or at least basic requirements that I had, and then, you know, a couple options that I looked at. It won't cover all of the options that I looked at because that would make this video way too long. So we'll just make it 5 cars that I looked at and considered before I actually made my choice. And then the next video will probably be how you out there can buy or maybe actually afford a supercar in your 20s. And believe it or not, it's actually not that impossible. And I might actually need to split that one up into a couple videos, but we'll deal with that when we get there. And then the last couple videos will actually have to wait because I haven't actually bought my car yet. But when it comes time to buy it, I'll take you guys through the buying process, the pickup, the trip back, you know, whatever it ends up being. And needless to say, because I have no idea when that will be, these videos will kind of just be scattered in between some of our other content. I am trying to get a bunch of stuff lined up, even though it's kind of difficult to do anything really right now. But you know, once all the videos are up, I'll make a nice neat playlist and stick it on the channel page so you guys can find them very easily. In the event that somewhere down the line you need them, they'll be there. Okay, so let's talk requirements then, I guess. So as many of you know, and if you don't, welcome to the channel. This is my current vehicle. It's a 20-year-old SUV from Mercedes, the ML320 of the year 2000. It's a very strange way to put it, but basically it's an SUV, as you can tell. It has all-wheel drive. It's very good for the snow. Made about 215 horsepower when it was brand new. No idea how much it makes now. So my requirements for my supercar were pretty much the exact opposite. I want something low to the ground, 2 doors, maybe double, 2.5 times the horsepower, somewhere close to 500 is what I was looking for. So now we have our requirements. 2-door car, 500-ish horsepower, and oh, forgot to mention the last one. I needed it to have a manual transmission. And that's more of a personal preference, and actually some of the cars on the list don't have manual transmissions as even options. But it was something I was looking for, although it wasn't at the top of my list at the time of actually choosing my car. Things might have changed. Before we get into the list, real quick, if you guys could go out right now and buy any supercar of your choice, what would you buy and why? Let me know down in the comments below, and now we can get in the list. Alright, so first car on the list is the Porsche 911. For the purposes of my search, I went with the 997. So anybody that knows anything about Porsche knows that these cars hold their value exceptionally well. You could go back, find like a 2-year-old Porsche that's maybe lost $10,000 in value and been driven a pretty decent amount. Now, when you get into the 911, there's about 4 million different options to choose from. You have the Carrera 2S, the Carrera 4S, the Turbo S. Then you have, I don't know, the Targas, the whatever. You guys get the point. There's a billion options out there. Now, not to mention, they look great and they have the power and handling capabilities to match. Mainly because they've been changing the same car for the last 100 years. Don't at me. Now, for the purposes of this video, we're looking at the 997 Turbo. It made just shy of 500 horsepower at a respectable 473 horsepower, but made it to a 6-speed manual transmission and the rear engine layout. You can have some pretty good fun with this car. Now, the jury is still out as to whether or not the 911 is a supercar, whether it fits the definition, but this video isn't about what is or isn't a supercar, so we're just moving on. Now, this next car is on pretty much every list of affordable supercars out there, and it's the first gen R8 V8. Now, the Gen 1 R8 is probably one of my favorite cars of all time. Every time I see one, I just lose my mind. Now, age-wise, this is probably one of the oldest, if not the second oldest, cars on the list, but it doesn't really look that old, and every time you see it, it just... All in all, I think it's just a super clean-looking car, and makes a healthy 430 horsepower out of a 4-liter naturally aspirated vacuum cleaner. Did I just say vacuum cleaner? I meant engine, of course. Adding to the appeal of the R8, the gated manual shifter, and not to mention the Quattro all-wheel drive system, which makes this a perfect everyday supercar, really. Now, from what I've heard and done research on, the only downside to buying one of these today is that the infotainment system seems ancient in comparison to some of the other cars that we have on the list today. But when you've got the sound of a naturally aspirated 4-liter V8 vacuum cleaner behind your head, you just won't care. Wait, did I just say vacuum? Sliding, okay. Alright, and number 3 on our list is probably one of the newest cars. Actually, it is the newest car available, and it's a handy-dandy Mercedes-Benz. And we're sliding again. Number 3 is the MercedesAMG GT-C. Now they have the GTS and the GTR as well, which are also possible options if you're willing to go a little bit higher mileage. But if you're looking 3,000-4,000 miles, you can get a GT-C well under 100 grand actually. Now, not only does this have the burbly goodness that we all know and love as the 4-liter V8 bi-turbo engine from Mercedes-Benz, it also makes 550 horsepower, making it one of the most powerful vehicles on the list. Now, the last 2 cars on the list have had one thing in common. They've reached the bottom of their depreciation curves and might actually be on their way back up, whereas the GTC probably still has a little bit to drop before it reaches that level. But I'll cover all that financial stuff in our Can You Actually Afford It video. But you know, the AMG GT is definitely one of the newer cars on the list. The infotainment is recent. It doesn't have a manual transmission, but it has the power and the noise to kind of make up for it. But yeah, moving on. The can't slide out of your own passenger seat, or slide off of your own passenger seat. I don't know. Anyway, number 4 on our list is the Lamborghini Gallardo, but also the Audi R8 first gen V10. And now I know that the R8 has already been on the list, but the V10 R8 and the Lamborghini Gallardo are very similar cars. I won't say they're the same, but they do share an engine, although the R8 is slightly detuned to make 520 horsepower, whereas the Lamborghini makes 560, I believe. Now, the Lamborghini Gallardo, over the course of the 10 years of production, produced well over 14,000 units. Now, that might not seem a lot in comparison to something like a Camry or a Corolla, but in comparison to other supercars, that's a pretty large number. For reference, the Lamborghini Aventador came out 9 years ago now, and they've just crossed 8,000 units. So, suffice to say, they've made quite a lot of Gallardos. And now, for that reason, even though they did split it up and they had the facelift with the different taillights and all that stuff, Gallardo prices took a pretty big dip a couple years ago. So now, like I said before, the Gallardo has a naturally aspirated V10 that makes 550 horsepower. That sounds incredible, but to top it off, it's made into a gated 6-speed manual transmission, similar to the R8. And actually it was one of the last manual transmissions to ever be made. So now, all of these combined make it a pretty tempting option. However, that logo of the Raging Bull on the front of that car kind of throw a little bit of a wrench into your plans if you plan on owning it. Mainly because that one logo makes maintenance extremely expensive on this car. And that might be an additional cost that you have to consider as to whether or not you can actually afford it. Again, future video. So moving... Do bulls moo? What noise do bulls make? Whatever. Moving on. Okay, now this last one almost didn't make the list. I don't know if I want to drive another car that's so old. And of course, by old, you can probably guess what it already is. It's the Nissan GTR. The GTR has basically remained unchanged since it came out back in 2006, and that was 14 years ago. Now, that's not to say that it's not a great car, but guys, 14 years unchanged. Now, despite making anywhere from 565 to 600 horsepower, having a 0 to 60 time of around 3 seconds, and an all-wheel drive launch control system that puts supercars to shame, this old gal has a pretty fitting nickname, Godzilla. Radioactive lizard that looks a lot like our other friend, the T-Rex, which actually represents what this car is, a dinosaur. Now, there are more than a few issues with buying a GTR. And the first of those is the price. Now, there are GTRs out there that you can get for between 50 and 60K, and some unsuspecting buyer might hop on the chance to own a supercar killer for the price of a base E-Class. But because of their power, these cars are often one of the most beat up vehicles on the market. And if you do find one and you really want it, I highly suggest that you look it over a million times before actually biting the bullet and buying one, because if there does end up being something wrong with it, you'll have quite a few issues, and that's problem number 2. So one of the GTR's main selling points is that no two GTRs are the same. Each one is hand-built in a factory by one person. So your engine and your transmission are only made to work with each other. One GTR's transmission cannot be transferred over to another. So if for any reason there's an issue with either your engine or your transmission, you'll probably end up paying as much as you paid for the car to get your issues sorted. And is that really worth it for a car that hasn't changed in 14 years? Probably not. So now, obviously, these weren't all the cars that I looked at. If you're looking to buy a car, you should probably have a list of somewhere close to 10 different cars that compare closely with what you want, so you can make sure that you're making the right choice, because a car is a pretty big investment. And now when you're talking supercars, it's an even bigger number. So I had a lot of different factors that I looked at, but honestly, at some point, it ends up being, what car do you want? So for me, it took a little bit of thinking, but in the end, I kind of always knew that I wanted that specific car. And there you have it. So guys, if you enjoyed the video, definitely be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, ring that notification bell to get notifications when I post my latest videos. And speaking of newer videos, I think you guys are really gonna like what I post next week. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And that's it. With that, I'll catch you guys in the next one.